What's up, you guys? My name is Zanny and welcome to or back to my YouTube channel. If you are a recurring subscriber, thank you so much, and if you are not, that's okay, but I hope that you stay because we have an amazing time on this channel, and as soon as you hit that subscribe button, your life automatically improves for the better. So I suggest you automatically improve your life and hit that subscribe button. Just saying. In today's video, I am going to be giving you guys the ultimate guide to becoming the best crocheter ever. I have been crocheting for a very long time. I first learned to crochet when I was probably like 8 or 9. I just remember it being 5th grade, so I'm pretty sure that's like 8, 9, 10, like 9, maybe 9 or 10 when I started crocheting. And I also have a small crochet business that I started my freshman year of college, where I sell different crochet things that I make. So if you guys are interested in checking out my business, I will be sure to link my TikTok and Etsy as well as my Pinterest and everything down below. You guys can see what I'm doing outside of YouTube. But here today, I'm going to be showing you guys how to get started with crochet. So this is definitely a beginner friendly video. If you have never picked up a crochet hook or even stepped into a yarn store or anything like that, this is the video for you, because I'm going to be telling you everything that you need in order to get started in crochet. And I'm also going to be giving you guys a couple of first projects that you can do as a beginner, because I know that that's the main thing, or at least when I first started crocheting, was like, okay, what do I make? Before we get into projects, I'm gonna start off by talking about what you need in order to get started. So, okay, let's get into talking about the material. Really, there's like 2 main materials that you need when it comes to crochet, and that is of course the crochet hook and the yarn. And so there are a couple of other things that you can get in order to help make crocheting easier for you, but you don't necessarily have to buy these things. There are many different types of crochet hooks, like size wise and also style wise, that you can choose from. The most important thing when it comes to determining the type of hook that you're going to use is how you want your project to look. So the smaller the crochet hook, the tighter your stitch is going to be, and the closer together your stitches are going to be. And so that's going to allow your project to either be more uniform, or if you want your project to have a more see-through and like sheer look, you can also use the larger hooks to give you a more exaggerated and like bigger stitch. You're able to read crochet hooks in multiple ways. And I actually have a little chart that I will insert right here that I'm looking at. And so you can see on the left side is the alphabet letters, and then on the right side they have the hook sizes in millimeters. These are just different ways of naming the hooks. Really, the only difference is one is US terms and one is UK terms, and so I'm pretty sure that the US follows the alphabet, whereas the UK and other countries follow the metric system or the millimeters. I also prefer to go by the millimeters just because I've noticed that not all crochet hooks have a corresponding alphabet letter, so it's just easier to use the millimeters. Also, crochet hook sizes can go all the way up to 32 millimeters. You can really have fun and be creative with your hook sizes. The hook size that you use will ultimately determine how much time that you spend on a project. The yarn that you're using and the yarn texture also plays a big part into the size of your project as well, but your crochet hook is going to be the main thing that decides how big your stitches are. So that's just something important to consider. Like I said, if you want your project to be more uniform and less like see-through and more sturdy, I would suggest using the smaller crochet hooks. So this ranges anywhere from 3 millimeters to 5 millimeters, and I typically use these hooks for tops, shorts, pants, skirts, any type of clothing or accessories that I'm making. I feel like these are better because I don't like my clothes to be see-through all the time. There's a time and place, okay? If I'm trying to wear like everyday clothes or just have more casual, cute crochet products, I try to use the smaller hooks so that way it's there's a little more coverage. So it really is all up to your preference. There are so many type of crochet hooks that you can pick from just in regards to styles. The most basic hooks that you can get at your local craft store or even Walmart are usually these like metal ones. I think the brand is called like Boyer or something like that, but Walmart carries these, Target carries these, like literally any craft store has these. And these are just the basic metal crochet hooks. They don't have any type of grip or anything like that to give your hand support, but I do think that they are the best for beginners to start off with, just because they're usually not that expensive, and you can buy individual crochet hooks instead of having to like commit to an entire set. And I think that that's really good for beginners, because especially if you're first getting into the crochet, you don't really know if you like the project or if you like crochet. I think these hooks are perfect for beginners. They also have these really cheap plastic hooks. I do not suggest that y'all get those, because I think that they make crocheting harder, especially if you're using acrylic yarn. It's just like the noise, the texture when you're crocheting, like just the flimsiness of the hook. Don't buy the plastic hooks. Your life will probably be a lot easier if you just use the metal hook. Just saying, but that's just me. Of course, outside of the metal hook, there are also more supportive crochet hooks. So if you decide that you really like crocheting and you want to keep continuing with the craft, but you also want to maintain your hand health and make sure that you're, you know, keeping your hands healthy, I would suggest getting a more aerodynamic crochet hook. So that is literally just a crochet hook with a grip. So this is one of my many crochet hooks. I literally have a little jar of crochet hooks here, and this is what the metal ones look like, and then the one with the grip. And so this sort of just gives you more to grab whenever you're crocheting versus like having to pinch your fist tighter. Some people need even more support than this, so they take beauty blenders and stick them on. People also use tennis balls. People also just make like just different customizable hooks, and if you really like crochet, you could become somebody who even makes crochet hooks. Like that's definitely a business idea or like opportunity that you can profit off of. People make resin hooks. You have a lot of freedom in crochet, especially when it comes to picking a crochet hook. So now that you have your crochet hook, we now are going to talk about yarn. When it comes to picking your yarn in crochet, there are two things that you have to consider, and that is the yarn weight and also the textures. I'm gonna insert a little chart here that just lists the different yarn sizes, and it also states the hooks sizes that go with the yarns, and also the type of the yarn types that these would fall into. Any yarn closer to the beginning of the spectrum is going to be sort of your finer yarn. We have super fine, fine, and lightweight yarn. These are going to be your more like delicate yarns. If you are making something that's a little lacy, or you want it to be a little more flowy and just like girly and delicate, I would suggest using these types of yarns, because one, it's not as much fiber, so the pieces are just more flowy and a lot more lightweight, and it's definitely not going to be pieces that are like full coverage unless you are willing to spend the time to do that. If you are, bless your soul, I'm scared of you. And then we have the medium 4 yarn, and so this is going to be your most common type of yarn that you are going to use. So the medium 4 comes in many different textures. As long as you are using the yarn weight that matches the pattern or tutorial that you are following, you should be good with your yarn. You just have to make sure that it has the same weight. Obviously, if it's a different texture, that might change the measurements a little bit, so I would just think about that while you're crocheting. Like if you notice, okay, it's a little bigger in this aspect, then okay, make those adjustments whenever you are crocheting, so that way the pieces come out similar. But in crochet, if you want your crochet piece to be the exact same as whatever your inspiration is based off of, if you're following a pattern or tutorial, you need to make sure that you are using the same weight yarn and the same size hook at least. And that's just gonna make your life easier, because you're not gonna have to like guess, okay, what adjustments do I need to make because I am using a different yarn, especially if you are a beginner. If you become more comfortable with crochet and a lot more confident, you can switch it up and like freestyle crochet, that's what I call it. And you know, use different hook sizes and, you know, change the patterns to your liking. But I think to get a basic foundation and understanding, it's best to use what the person in the video is using or the patterns, so that way you can ensure that you're getting the very best outcome. There are also many types of yarn textures as well. There's fuzzy yarn, there's like mohair, cotton, sport yarn, Afghan, Aryan, worsted. There's chunky yarn, yarn for rugs, like really bulky yarn. Like there are many different yarn types, styles, textures, all of those types, weights, all of those things that you can choose from when it comes to making crochet projects. So I would just do a little research. Acrylic yarn is the most popular yarn used. I would say acrylic and cotton are the most popular yarns used, just because I think price-wise they are on the cheaper side, especially acrylic. Like you can go to Walmart and get the Lovecraft, I think that's what it's called, or not Lovecraft County, LOL, and yarn is. You can go and get that for like $3. Now, is that going to be the best yarn for the project that you are using? No, I don't know. Really, it's up to your preference. A lot of people love to crochet with acrylic yarn. That's like their main thing. They use it for all projects no matter what. I think it is important to remember that acrylic yarn does stretch, especially when heat is applied to it. It just causes the fibers to stretch more. So if you are wanting your piece to be a little tighter and not as stretchy, I would suggest using cotton yarn or doing research on other yarns that aren't as stretchy. Bamboo yarn is really great. If you have like a cotton and acrylic mixed together, that is also a really good alternative to just acrylic yarn, because I know cotton yarn can be a little more expensive. The price cheaper if you get blends of like cotton and acrylic or whatever. I would suggest doing a little bit of research on the different types of yarn. There's literally a whole crafting world dedicated to yarn and dyeing yarn and people who make yarn, and it's its own thing. But I think the main things that you guys need to remember is that weight 4 is the most popular kind, and acrylic and cotton are the most commonly used. However, there are other yarn textures. It's just important to keep in mind that the more designer you get with your yarns, the more expensive it's going to be. So if you are ordering from a small business versus places like Hobby Lobby or Joann's, that is also going to change the price of the yarn. So that's just another thing to keep in mind. This is one thing I forgot to mention. So on every yarn skein that you get will usually have a recommended hook size to go with it, and I would suggest going by the hook size. That way you can ensure that your project looks normal, because sometimes when you use thinner yarns with bigger crochet hooks, it can mess up the look of the yarn, and vice versa. If you use smaller crochet hooks with larger yarns, it can affect the look of the stitch. So I would suggest playing around with different crochet projects that have used different yarn sizes, so that way you can figure out what your preferred crochet hook size is. Now I'm going to talk about some other things that I feel like are not necessarily, like, you don't have to have these to crochet, but it's very helpful. And so stitch markers are very helpful whenever you're crocheting, especially if you're working in rounds, because you're able to mark either where you did your first stitch, or if you have to do increases in somewhere, you can use the stitch marker for that. They're very helpful in just making sure that you know where to crochet, increase, decrease, or whatever it is that you're doing. You don't necessarily need those. People also use bobby pins as stitch markers. You could use a clothespin. People even use yarn. Like if you have some white yarn, you could tie it around, like literally cut this much and just tie it around the stitch, and bam, you got a stitch marker. So really you don't have to buy these, but I do have some just because I find that they are very helpful. And really, if you can do anything to lessen your brain work while crocheting, I feel like the better. Some other basic things that you're gonna need, I would suggest some scissors and a measuring tape. I will link a video to show you guys how to take your own measurements so that way you know. But especially if you're making clothing items, I think it's very helpful to have a measuring tape. The last material that you need, I would say, is a yarn needle. And so these are just helpful for tucking your ends in. One thing about crochet, you don't want to just leave the yarn sticking out. If that is your life, if that's what you like to do, I'm not judging you. There are pretty cute like scrap yarn projects where they leave the yarn hanging out, and like it just adds more dimension to your project. So obviously you don't have to tuck in your ends. There's also the method of crocheting over your ends, so tucking them as you go, which I think is one of the most beneficial ways because it just saves you a lot of time from having to go back into your project and then tuck in all the ends at the end. Like I feel like that's the thing that stops people from finishing their projects and actually wearing their projects. It's like, okay, I just crocheted all of this stuff and I sewed it together, and now I gotta tuck in all these ends and cut them, and there'll be like millions of ends. So I totally understand people who do not. We're not down with that, tucking in their ends. But there are ways to tuck in your ends as you are crocheting. You can also tuck in your ends without using a yarn needle. I found a method, like if you literally just take a smaller crochet hook and stick it through stitches and grab your hook and then pull grab the tail yarn and pull it through all of those stitches, bam, your ends are tucked. Those are all of the materials that you're going to need. I can link some like beginner crochet kits, but really what I would suggest doing is finding a pattern or tutorial that you like and just going out and buying one crochet hook and one skein of yarn and making the project. And then if you decide, okay, I like crochet, now I'm gonna buy some really nice crochet hooks and some really nice yarn and like fully commit to projects, bam. Now we are going to go ahead and talk about stitches. So within crochet, there are literally millions of thousands of stitches that you can do. Typically, the more complicated the stitch, the longer it is going to take you to make the piece. But there are only 3 stitches that you really need to know in order to get started in crochet. So the first one is the single crochet. This stitch, if you use the stitch, it can take longer to crochet things just because it is so small, and it's also not as tall, so it doesn't take up as much length or width. So if you are crocheting in all single crochets, just know that it will take a little longer and the stitch will be a little tighter. The second most known stitch, I would say, is the half double crochet. I feel like the half double crochet is the happy medium stitch because its width is the same as a single crochet. Its height is just a little more, it's just a little taller. It helps to give your projects some more dimension, and then also because the stitch is a little bigger, it just takes up more area in general, and it doesn't cause your projects to be see-through. So the half double crochet, I feel like, is the happy medium stitch. I've made sure to link some tutorial videos for you guys of these stitches, so that way you know what you need to, how you can do the stitches. Like, don't worry, do not worry. The final most popular stitch that I feel like you need to know is the double crochet, and this one, once again, all of these you can use for any type of project. It really just depends on the look that you're going for. It just takes up more length, so that way you don't have to crochet as many rows versus the half double crochet and single crochet. The stitches can be a little less closer together. This is just something that you'll just have to play around with. You can find different projects with different stitches and literally I would suggest just chaining a couple of chains, like maybe 10 or 20 chains, and then you can do like a practice strip of just single crochets, like literally make a 5x5, and then bam, you've just practiced the stitch. I would just really suggest getting the understanding, like the foundation stitches, because these are the foundations for the more complicated stitches. So please start with the single crochet, half double crochet, a double crochet, and then you can work your way up to the more complicated stitches, like the strawberry stitch. Alright, you guys, so editing Zanir here to end this video. I decided to break this into 2 parts because I felt like the pattern part was going to be way too long. So please stay tuned for the next video. It is going to be the part 2 to this video, which is going to be giving you guys different beginner crochet projects, and they're all really cute. I feel like you guys are really gonna like it. And yeah, so stay tuned for the next video for the beginner crochet projects. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, all of that stuff. Hopefully this summer I am more consistent. I have a lot of things that I'm doing that I want to be sharing with y'all, so stay tuned for all of that. And thank you so much for watching. I love you, and I hope that you stay, and until next time, bye.